Welcome to the State of Affairs in partnership with Serbian Radio Chicago. We are having conversations that matter. Very honored today to be joined by an old friend and our honored guest, former Congressman from Texas, Judge Ted Poe. Welcome back.
Thank you, Professor.
Very good to see you. A lot to unpack, unfortunately, as we are going through a lot, not only in our nation, but around the world. But given that you are in Texas, I'd like to start with immigration, obviously. And we are looking at videos and pictures of our border being completely open, and even to the point where our guards are actually removing barbed wire and opening it up and allowing migrants to freely cross into the United States. What is the situation in Texas as you see it?
Well, at the Texas-Mexico border, which is a little over 900 miles, it is chaos. Everybody is coming across the border, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're getting a lot of bad and ugly, and we have for several years.
Right.
There have been, just since the Biden administration has taken over, 7 million illegal crossings into the United States from the southern border. 7 million. And
Wow.
It's getting worse every day because this administration has told the world, come to the United States and we will take care of you. We will feed you. We will house you. We will give you medical attention and bring your families with you. So everybody's gotten that word, and people are coming over by the thousands every day. There is no border control. The United States has given up its sovereignty to its southern border and allowing, I think it is an invasion. I mean, how many people do you have to have before you would call it an invasion? And now people coming from just recently, Colombia, they've planted the Colombian flag, and the Venezuelan flag have been planted in Texas once they cross. That's how arrogant these people are who are crossing. And I really don't blame them so much. I blame our government. And so nothing is stopping them. In fact, the federal government is helping to facilitate people coming in the U.S. Once they get here, after they have their medical conditions taken care of, they're sent wherever they want to go in the United States at taxpayer cost. And
Yes.
So it's an invasion. The government is not stopping it. The Texas governor has done what he can, I think, to stop the crossings to some extent. But it is the duty of the federal government, and it is not taking place. And let me just say this. We are the only country in the world that has this policy, insanity, of not protecting our borders. Every country in the world protects their borders from people coming in without permission, except the United States. And I think history will not be kind to our country. And it is, of course, having all kinds of cultural problems in the United States because we don't defend our border.
Well, so let me ask you this. And as you said, Texas governor is doing what he can. Obviously, Florida governor has been doing what he can. But sending migrants now, which some of our governors have done, shipping them off to some of the liberal cities who obviously are opening their doors and saying it's free for all. I see that as relieving somewhat, let's say, Texas and Florida, but at the same time, we are spreading these migrants that we cannot vet around the country, around the cities, shipping them to Chicago, to New York, to Baltimore. We see the hotel rooms now all over New York that are full with migrants that are being schlepped into the city. Is that really the best idea?
Well, the reason that is occurring is twofold. One, there is no room in Texas for 7 million people to come in from the southern border. The state of Texas is only 26 million people. You add 7 million people, that's another 50% increase almost.
Yeah.
So there's no room. We have small towns on our border, primarily Hispanic origin, but they're small. They cannot house the thousands and thousands of people coming from all over the world. And I mean from all over the world, everywhere from China, even to Ukraine and other places. There's no place for them. So the governor in this state has told people who cross in, we will send you wherever you want to go in the United States. And those people who cross say, well, I'd like to go to Chicago. And they sign an affidavit that they want to go to Chicago. We send them up there because one reason is because there's no reason, there's no way we can take care of them. And second, sanctuary cities who have been talking for years about having open borders, now they're paying the price for that philosophy so that they can take care of these individuals who cross without permission because they are a sanctuary city. So, you know, it's hypocritical for like New York primarily and Los Angeles not to take these individuals, these migrants. They have the open border philosophy, take care of them because you want the open border. So I think it makes sense to send them. And once again, the individuals are requesting these particular cities, and our government says, sure, wherever you want to go, we'll send you wherever you wish to go in the United States. And one other factor that's really detrimental and serious, set aside people coming over who want a better life, true refugees looking for asylum. You've got the drug cartels, the criminal gangs, human traffickers coming across the border as well. And we are naive not to realize how much money is being made on the illegal trafficking and smuggling into the United States by the criminal gangs. And then, of course, we get everybody else too. We get the Chinese. Now, what are they doing over here? You know, so we have all of that coming in. There's going to be a price to pay. This country will have to pay the price with vetting these people when they start. Some of them start committing criminal conduct, and of course, the drug cartels smuggling in fentanyl. 100,000 Americans died last year from fentanyl poisoning. 100,000. And that's because of the work with the Chinese government, and I think the Mexican government and the drug cartels to bring fentanyl into the United States. So I covered a bunch of things there, but it's a tragedy that's happening to our country.
Well, so Judge, given that you said that the federal government is not stopping it, they're facilitating it, how do we stop it? Is it too late? And you are right, we will be paying the price, and we already are in many ways. How do we stop it? And again, yes, I understand completely what you're saying. They are requesting to go to cities and we are shipping them elsewhere. Why not send them back? At what point do we start defending our border, just like, as you said, any other country?
Well, there you go, Professor, being logical again. It's they should be sent back. They should not be allowed to come into the United States illegally. The United States brings in legally 1 million people a year who have done the right way to come into the United States, request permission. And so we are a nation of immigrants. 1 million a year. That's a lot of folks. That's more than all the European nations do put together. So this idea that we are, that we are some way being not accommodating to immigrants is wrong. But come the right way or don't come at all. Why we don't send them back is because the administration does not send them back, and it could, but it is refusing to obey the law that we have on the books to people coming into the United States should not come in without permission. And if you do that, you should be sent back to the country from which you came. And we used to do that. We used to have a policy where if you came in from Mexico, for example, and as soon as we found out, the Border Patrol found out the person was illegally crossing into the U.S., they were sent immediately right back across the Texas-Mexico border. Meanwhile, we bring in people from Mexico legally. So that was working fairly well until the administration made the statement, everybody come to the United States. It makes no difference whether you're legal or illegal, whether you're a criminal or whether you're a good person, you're all welcome. And So people have heard that announcement, that public address announcement all over the world, and they are coming from all over the world into the United States. In fact, just one more statistic. Most of the people entering the U.S. illegally are not from Mexico. They're called OTMs, other than Mexicans. And so more than half are from other places all over the world, not from Mexico. But it is a tragedy. It's a disgrace to our nation. And I invite President Biden and the vice president to go down to the border and just stand there for a while and watch what's coming into the United States.
Interesting. And I do also know, and you are aware, that Western European nations are also being invaded, essentially, that this open immigration trajectory is happening in the United States, but it's also happening in Europe. And to all of us, to a trained eye, all of this looks organized and it looks deliberate. And obviously what's happening here in the United States is deliberate. The administration is encouraging it. What is the ultimate goal? Why is this happening? Why are we seeing boats and boats, for example, of African migrants arriving in Italy and in France and in Spain? What is the ultimate goal, let's say, of the globalists or whoever is doing this deliberately? Why is this happening?
Well, my personal opinion is it is organized, and it's organized by groups who believe in, shall say, the one world government, and that all nations should be accommodating to all other nations. That's their philosophy, and there's a lot of money behind that. Different not so-called nonprofits are involved in that and are funding people coming into the United States. But also, as you said, Italy is another example. That's a country that's actually woken up and realized, hey, we can't have it. We cannot handle all of the people coming in on organized boats from North Africa into Italy. They say they can't handle it. They want to stop it. And so it's an organized effort. It will destroy the Western civilization to some extent because of the people that are coming in with ideas from wherever they came that they want to implement into Western culture. But it's the idea that there is a society should be very open to all nations going to any other nation.
But you're right. There seems to be forced openness on behalf of the Western nations. They must be open while everybody else seems to be encouraged to protect their own borders. But the Western, and dare I say, Christian white nations, that seems to be a permeating idea here, which, noticing it, you get labeled if you notice it, but that seems to be the case.
Well, it's true that people want to go to Western nations, especially when Western nations refuse to protect their identity, protect their borders, and they go. I mean, it's been obvious. It's been going on for years in North Africa, and of course, it's gotten out of control there, just as it's gotten out of control at the southern U.S. border as well. It's the idea that people should be able to go to any country they want to, and if you oppose that, you are labeled as some kind of bigot, which is absolutely not true. But that is what the people who think globally want. Of course, those folks that think globally that are in the United States, they don't want migrants coming into their area. They just want them going to somebody else's area. They're hypocritical about having a sanctuary in their neighborhood. We can't have that.
Right.
They want to come somewhere else.
Interesting. Well, let's juxtapose this, not protecting our own borders, with this, I would say, at this point, completely crazy endeavor that we must protect Ukraine's border at any cost, by any means possible. And I mean by any means, including nuclear war. Why is Ukraine's border so much more relevant than our own border or any other border in Europe?
Professor, you're getting my blood pressure up when you start talking like that, because it is utter nonsense. Nonsense that we say in our arrogance as a nation, we're going to protect the identity of Ukraine and their borders and those mean old Russians. We're going to keep them out of Ukraine. But meanwhile, we'll let anybody that wants to cross into the United States come on over. And that is the policy of the United States. My opinion is it's all payback. It's payback for the involvement of the Biden administration, the Biden family, payback to the Ukrainian government for deals that have been made with Ukraine and the United States on the sly. I say United States, the Biden family. That's my opinion. I think it's payback for that. And we have another factor. The United States has in Congress the War Party. The War Party is made up of Republicans and Democrats who've never seen a war they don't want the United States to get involved in. Any type of war we can be involved in, they want the United States in there with guns and metal, and they're for it. If you look at the history of the United States, just since the Korean War, all of the military engagements that the United States has been involved in, including in the Balkans, and even Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, goes on and on and on. All of these, why has the United States been so involved in everybody else's business since the Korean War? Well, because of the War Party, on this idea that the United States, well, we don't like a certain government, so we're going to go remove it. Or we don't like a certain area being controlled by one nation, so we're going to go split it up. And of course, I'm talking about Serbia and all of that situation in the area. So it's the War Party, and the War Party likes this. Well, we got a war, we can go fight in Ukraine. We can send military industrial complex stuff over to Ukraine, and we can protect democracy. It's all nonsense. One other thing, Ukraine is not a democracy. Ukraine is not a country that we can uphold as saying this is the ideal democracy and freedom. It is a corrupt government. It has been for a long time. I have been there several times. The Ukrainian people, they're wonderful. The government is corrupt. It has been for a number of years. So it's not a democracy. The current president suppresses the media and also political opponents. And so it's nonsense. But it's the military, the idea that the United States, we just need another war to go into. You know, we got out of Afghanistan. We turned and ran from Afghanistan. So now we need another one. Let's start one over in Ukraine. And the West is buying that. NATO is buying that. And as you said, and rightfully so, I don't know how much longer we can poke the Russian bear in the eye before Putin really retaliates to make sure that he wins and takes part of the Crimea. And it means going to war with the West. It might be that because it's only escalating, and the rhetoric here in the West about sending more money to Ukraine, I'm for one think that's nonsense. And if it set all that aside, our border is more important than Ukrainian border. Fix it first before we start getting involved in other people.
And certainly the lives of Americans are more important with this conversation of a looming government shutdown. On the taxpayer dime, everything can get shut down except continuing to send money to Ukraine.
I know it is nonsense. It is the worst. It is the worst of everything. If you were to plan, which has happened, the United States involvement in Ukraine, this is the way it would be planned. In spite of all of the other priorities that the United States has, we're going to make sure that Ukraine survives and they don't get taken over by that mean old Russian Putin. You know, that's always the rhetoric. It's about Russia. It's about Putin, and it's going to shut down Americans and not being able to receive certain services. The country ought to be taken care of, but we'll make sure we send our money, American money, to Ukraine to help support the Biden administration philosophy of we're going to pay back the Ukrainians for what they have done for us personally.
Judge, you've been in Congress a long time. We certainly miss you there with the voice of reason. We have few of them left, but it seems that our elected officials are either incapable or our institutions are so debilitated at this point that we as American people don't see a way out. Even when we push our elected officials to fight for us, they seem like they have their hands tied. From your perspective now, being a civilian, why are our institutions inept and cannot really represent those who vote for them and cannot do anything?
Well, I think they won't represent the people who put them in office. The word representative, it's a simple word to understand. Each member of Congress represents about 760,000 people somewhere in the country. And I represented folks in Texas. And that means that representative should do the wishes of the majority of those 760,000 people. That is why that member is sent to Washington, because those people are all working, raising their families, going to school, working. So they send a representative. But when people get to Washington, and I think it's more now so than ever before, they don't represent the people back home. They represent themselves, what's best for them politically. That's just my opinion, But why do we have so many debates over things where most of the American public feel a certain way, but members of Congress want to do something differently? And it's really true with the administration. We have administration who really is not doing the wishes of the majority of Americans on almost any subject. They do what they want to do. And the state, the administrative state, the bureaucrats that don't hold public office, they just they hold power over the rest of us. And we're doing their will, not America's will, not what's best for the country and not what Americans want, but their will, their ideas about statism. The state is more important than even the Almighty, even God. Worship the state. Don't worship Christianity, for example, or any other religion. And so that's a long answer to your question. I think it's happening because it's true. They are representing other interests other than their own. One more. You got to go back to Ukraine with the military. The military-industrial complex in the United States, all the industry that makes guns and bombs and airplanes and all of that, they are big contributors to members of Congress. And so are members of Congress voting as lobbyists want them to vote, or are they voting as people back home want them to vote? So you're right in your assessment. Things are not getting done because the American will is not being taken care of. It's the will of the members of Congress or of the administrative state or of this administration, or all three.
So you mentioned the Balkans earlier, and while you were in Congress, you were the chairman or co-chair of the Serbian Congressional Caucus. You have fought for the interests of the Serbs for many, many years. You know the issues well. And in terms of even what's happening in Ukraine, and my personal opinion is that war is not going well for the globalists, for the deep state, for the permanent bureaucrats, whatever we want to call them. There has been consistent destabilizing issues coming out of the Balkans, especially out of Kosovo. And just last week, 4 Serbs are now, from what we know, in this very shady event that took place. 4 Serbs are dead, allegedly, is what we're hearing, and an Kosovo Albanian police officer. Do you think that they are looking for another powder keg, and obviously Balkans being one of those that is always easy to inflame? Given that Ukraine is not going well, are they looking for another war front and setting the stage, essentially? And Kosovo seems like a good place to start.
my own speculation is that would not surprise me. The war, I don't think the war is going well, contrary to what our state media says about the war in Ukraine. And it's not going to end up well. I mean, here's a war that's supposed to have taken 3 or 4 weeks, and here we are almost in several years. And be mindful that World War II only took 4 years, and now the experts, the experts who make all the decisions I'm reading that says that it'll be 2025 before victory is obtained in Ukraine. Well, if they're saying that, then there's no hope at all that Ukraine and the Western powers will be able to defeat Russia under the current circumstances. So somewhere somebody's going to make a decision. We have to escalate. We have to use more weapons. We may have to use American troops, whatever, or we'll go into other areas of the region. And the Serbs have been pressured by our administration to get involved in the war with Ukraine. Why in the world would we ask the Serbs to be involved in the war with Ukraine after we have betrayed the Serbian nation so many times, in my opinion? And that's not going to happen. The Serbs are not going to join in with NATO to fight in Ukraine. They're just not going to do it. It's not in their national interest. And neither are the Hungarians going to do that. Now you see that the Poles are now withdrawing some of their military support to Ukraine. Yes. And it's becoming very more unstable in the entire region, not just in Ukraine and in Russia. And then, of course, you got Belarus as well. So kind of looks like the World War I scenario where countries are starting to align themselves with one side or the other for various reasons. And it's not promising. So to answer your question, it wouldn't surprise me that what was taking place in Kosovo last week is just another example of trying to make the region unstable. And so if it's unstable, we got to have NATO come swooping in and save the day. You know, I've been to the base in Kosovo, K4. I've been there years ago, and I've asked the question for 20 years now, why is the United States in Kosovo? You know, we got 600 to 1,500 troops there at any given time. And I really don't get a good answer except, well, we're just here. You know, the war party. Go back to the war party. I'm rambling about your question, Professor, but what you say is troubling because more instability is on the horizon.
And that is a scary thought, given that we're entering another election cycle going into 2024. You've been elected many times, but for us, those are times that we remember fondly because we thought that our elections were free and fair and open. And going into 24, looking at what's happening to former President Trump, the weaponized institutions, especially the Department of Justice, are you hopeful? What are your predictions for 24? And is the election really even going to happen? Do we believe in that free and fair and open election?
Well, we believe in a free and fair and open election, but I'm not so sure that it is a reality anymore. More and more Americans are distrustful of the electoral system in this country. And it makes no difference who they are, young, old, any race, male, female, different parties. They're distrustful of the election process because they're not sure that when they vote, their vote is counted, and their vote are the only ones that are counted, legal votes. People have distrust, and constantly we see this occurring across the country. You know, we can backtrack and talk about the last election and all of the problems that I thought occurred in the election. So I'm not so sure. I'm a little hopeful, but I am very discouraged. So what happens to many Americans? They feel like I do. They don't go vote next year. They say my vote's not going to make a difference because the election is already rigged one way or the other. So it doesn't make any difference. And that is the problem that we have with the election process in this country. all of the regulations and all of the voting machines, all of these things are suspect, have become suspect, where we cannot put our trust in them. I went to Iraq when Iraq had its first free election in history, in January 5th, 2005. And I watched their elections. That's the first time women in that country had ever been allowed to vote. And the process was relatively simple. They used paper ballots. People walked and voted in schools like we do. And when they voted, they stuck their finger in an inkwell to prove they have voted, but also to keep them from voting again. And another ballot worked pretty well. They had elections, and it turned out, I thought, very appropriate, that it was a fair election that was done in Iraq. But we make ours so complicated that we have people voting, and then all of a sudden the votes change after midnight, and you wake up the next morning and who you thought won, they lost the race. We have a joke here in Texas that in South Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley, that people live, but when they die as a Republican, but as soon as they have passed away, that the next election they're voting as Democrats. So people are skeptical about our election process, and I think anything we can do to make it more streamlined, easier to vote, voter identification. You got to have a voter ID to do anything in this country except vote. So anyway, I'm cynical about it, Professor. I hope we get it together as a nation, but I'm not so sure we will.
And if we do not, and I think that is what we're going to close with, even though I don't want us to close on a negative note, but if we do not, and as you said, many of us have lost faith in that democratic process, what is the pathway forward? Because we certainly know that we have to save this nation. As a former congressman, as a judge, as a Texan, how do we do it?
Well, we don't give up. We see the problem before us, and rather than surrender and give up, we fight tooth and nail to make sure we have fair elections. We fight tooth and nail to get people elected in local elections and national elections that represent our feelings as individuals, our position. So we have to work harder, not give up, but work harder. And that is our mission, to make sure that the process works, because it only will work if we all do our individual responsibility, not just to vote, but make sure we have fair elections and make sure that we get people elected who represent us, and then we'll go fight for us in Washington, D.C., or in the State House, or in our city elections.
Judge, as always, wonderful insight and wonderful to see you again. Thank you.
Good to see you, Professor. Thank you.